This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome to Chapter 1 of our series, Web3 Wonders, The Next Internet Frontier. In this episode, titled, What is Web3 and Why It Matters?, we're going to explore the fundamental characteristics that make Web3 a game-changer in the digital landscape. So, let's dive in and uncover why this next evolution of the internet is so important. Someone just paid over $1 million for a digital house they can never live in. Strange? In this episode, we dive into how code, communities, and cryptography are quietly rewriting who owns what online, and why your next login might feel more like a passport than a password. That $1 million digital house isn't really about the pixels on screen. It's about who controls the rules of the game. For most of the internet's history, a few giant platforms have acted like referees, scorekeepers, and prize distributors all at once. They decide who can play, what counts as a score, and how much your wins are worth. Web3 asks a simple but radical question. What if those rules were transparent, programmable, and shared by everyone instead of guarded by a company's servers? Rather than just logging in and accepting the default settings of someone else's system, you bring your own identity, assets, and reputation with you, portable across apps like a well-packed travel bag you don't have to repurchase in every city. That shift doesn't just tweak business models, it opens space for entirely new ones, where users can become stakeholders, not just data points. In today's internet, every click, post, and payment flows through a handful of corporate toll booths. They decide who gets access, which integrations are allowed, and how much of the economic value reaches the people actually using or building the service. Web3 experiments with a different layout. Value, permissions, and even future infrastructure are encoded in open infrastructure that anyone can inspect and, in many cases, help steer. That's why developers are piling in. 23,000 plus ship code each month, and why we see early arenas like DeFi, NFTs, and DAOs test these new incentive systems in the wild. Think about how much of your online life currently happens inside sealed gardens. Your bank decides which apps can connect to your account. Your favorite game decides whether the items you've earned are tradable. A platform can change a payout formula overnight, and you simply wake up to a new reality. What's being tested in Web3 is whether those kinds of decisions can be governed by open infrastructure and incentives instead of unilateral policy updates. At the base layer are blockchains like Ethereum, which function as globally shared ledgers and settlement engines. When we say Ethereum processes transaction volume comparable to Visa each year, that's not just a bragging right. It signals that these rails are now handling real economic activity, not just hobbyist experiments. On top of those rails, developers deploy smart contracts, tiny autonomous programs that hold assets, enforce rules, and interact with one another without relying on a company-controlled database. DeFi is the clearest early laboratory. Protocols like Aave or Uniswap let you lend, borrow, and swap assets through smart contracts instead of a brokerage's backend. The roughly $50 billion still sitting in DeFi after the hype peak suggests that, even after speculation cooled, there remains a core group treating these systems as serious financial plumbing. The twist is that many of these protocols issue governance tokens, allowing users and builders to vote on fee models, collateral types, or product roadmaps. The line between customer and shareholder starts to blur. NFTs explored a different frontier, digital items with verifiable scarcity and provenance. Artists, game studios, and brands used them to test direct-to-fan models, royalties enforced by code rather than by contracts negotiated with intermediaries. DAOs added yet another dimension. Internet-native organizations where capital, coordination, and decision-making live on-chain, often with treasuries worth millions and contributors spread across time zones. One way to see this shift is like migrating from a closed-source operating system to an open one in finance, media, and online coordination. You can inspect the core logic, plug in new modules, and if you don't like the defaults, fork the whole stack and go your own way. That openness is what attracts those tens of thousands of developers, and why, despite volatility and very real risks, the experiments keep multiplying. A concrete way to see this shift is in how work and creativity get paid. A musician today might drop a track as a limited digital collectible, letting early listeners share an upside if demand grows, rather than relying only on streaming pennies. A small game studio can launch items whose trading fees fund future updates, aligning players with the game's long-term health. In DeFi, liquidity providers aren't just users, they resemble partners in a marketplace, earning a cut of every trade their capital enables. DAOs push this further. Contributors might receive tokens for writing code, designing art, or answering support questions, turning what used to be volunteer labor into a measurable stake. It's closer to a tech startup where early employees get equity, except the cap table and rules live in the open. One carefully written smart contract can coordinate thousands of strangers, moving billions, with no headquarters, just incentives, interfaces, and a shared belief that the code will do what it says. As these rails mature, expect daily tools to feel less like static websites and more like living markets. A newsletter could share upside with early readers. A rideshare app might let drivers own a slice of local revenue, closer to buying stock than collecting points. We may see talent pools where your track record travels with you, so switching platforms resembles changing cities with your credit score intact. Risky at first, but offering more leverage to those who contribute most. We're still early, and plenty can go wrong, from clumsy interfaces to outright scams, but the direction is unusual, users gaining leverage instead of losing it. Think of today as preheating the oven, not serving the meal. The real test will be whether these tools quietly fade into the background, like online maps, until using Web3 just feels like using the internet. Here's your challenge this week. Set up a simple Web3 wallet, like MetaMask or Phantom, then use it to do 2 real actions on-chain. Mint one free or low-cost NFT from a reputable project, and join one DAO's Discord that matches your interests, for example, creators, climate, or learning. Next, make a transaction that doesn't involve speculation, such as donating a small amount of crypto to a public goods project, like Gitcoin grants, or tipping a creator using a Web3 tool they mentioned. Finally, write a 2 to 3 sentence Web3 experiment recap and post it publicly, Twitter, Farcaster, Lens, or your favorite social platform, including what you did, what surprised you, and whether you do another on-chain action next week. This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!